Test-driven development with Rails. So why test-driven development? Because when you're working with Rails, of course, you'll be building web applications, and this days web application, you don't build it and let it stay there as it is. Always there will be new changes based from the feedbacks from users, or there will be other things to discover. There will be changes. So it would be better if there are tests that would make sure that changes to your code won't be breaking other features that you have previously created. So the process of test-driven development is, first you create tests and watch them fail. Number 2 is to create code to make the test pass. Then lastly, you can do refactor the codes and ensure that those tests are still passing. So this process is also known as red, green refactor. Maybe you have already heard it before. That's what it means. It's a cycle, continuous cycle. So next, we'd like to see the requirements for today's lesson. Requirement first is basic knowledge of Ruby on Rails. Then we got to have a working installation of Ruby on Rails. I'll be using 5.1.2, but any Ruby on Rails version within the 5 major version, or Rails 5, will probably work. So let's get right into it. So let's start. First, we'll create the Rails application by Rails new. So we'll be creating a company app, and then we will be listing the employees. And I'd like to pass here -t options, which will skip installing the default Rails testing framework. We want to use RSpec instead. Let's run that. We'll create our files, the application, and then also install the default gems. So just wait. So it created a company app folder for us. So let's cd into that. Then check what's inside. So here are the contents. So from there, we'd like to open our gem file. Then underneath, you'll see a group development test. Here we'd like to add new gems. One of those is RSpec Rails, which will be our main testing framework. And we'd also like to add a capybara, which would take care of working with the feature test. And then also we'd like to add factory girl Rails. So this one works with testing our models. And then after adding those gems to this group, we'll bundle them, so install them. So we've already installed these 3, but there's a command we need to execute to integrate these to RSpec Rails to our application. And so let's run that. That is RSpec, Rails G RSpec install. So it creates these files, which are just config files for RSpec, so that it could run well with our application. It hooks into the Rails environment and so on. So now we have that, we can now create a new test file for our app. So I don't memorize the code to generate the spec file, but we could use rake, or actually we will be running a generator, so we can check Rails G and grep RSpec. So these are actually all the generators that RSpec provides for us. So we want this, so we want to add a feature test. We'll run that is G respect feature, and then we'll pass in the feature name that we'd like to have. So what we want is user visits home page. So it creates this file. See what's inside this file. So here, respect feature user visits home pages. So we'll try to run this. Let's try. So just to see what's the output, and there's no, so it shows this one not yet implemented, and this one. So we'll add our actual spec, which will be wrapped on scenario user sees a list of employees, and then first user visits root path. You are probably already familiar with the root path, which should be set later. So visiting we will expect page to have content, employee listing. Also expect page to have CSS. So here we're already working with Capybara, so that it could check. This is a DSL. This visits have content. It's a DSL provided to us by Capybara. And then here have CSS. We'd like to be able to select a table with the class employee list, and then also have spec to have CSS employee list item, and you could provide a count for that count. Let's say you'd like to see 5. And now let's try to run this file again. Run this test. And we see a failure. Visit root path. So root path, we already know we have to set it in our routes. So we could add root to home index. Let's try to run it again. We should have another failure. Now, undefined method visits for respect human visit. Yeah, so it's a good thing about React is that it gives us suggestions. So should be visit, not visits, right? Okay, let's change that. Check again. So now we have this error. This is the expected error that we'd like to see. An initialized constant home controller with. So we need to create a controller, but since we're doing TDD, we need to create a test first. So earlier we saw a list of generators. We'll actually also generate our spec. G respect controller home. So it created spec for the controller for us. And then open that. Sorry. Spec controllers, home controls. So you could first try to run this. Spec controllers, home controller spec. See what happens. So we have this error. Run RealsDB migrate to created. So it prompts us that when testing, we need to have a database. So let's first run that. Afterwards, run again the spec. Now we have another error, uninitialized constant home controller, because we don't have a home controller yet. So we need to add home controller. First, before we do that, let's add more tests. So describe get index you like to be able to get index if is successful. Sorry, for the get index. This before block would run for every example. So this block here, the it block is actually an example. And then it is successful, expect response to be success. What this means is that the response should contain 200 message response code. It also should renders the index template. Response to render template index. So let's try to see if it's scaling properly. Actually, we already tested. Let's first then create a home controller. SP. No, we actually will just generate just G controller home, and then pass the name of the action. We have index action. You see, actually, since we have RSpec installed in our application, this will try to create a spec file for our home controller, for the controller that we're currently generating. But since we already have it created ourselves earlier, it asks us if we want to overwrite, but now we won't overwrite that. Already created our own. But it's up to you if you want to overwrite. Probably not. And then so we now have that controller, home controller. Also already have an index action. So we can now try to run this test again. So now we have a different error. Insert template has been extracted to a gem. So this is actually what happens to some Rails gems. Some of their some parts are being moved to another gem. So let's install that gem. So also on the test group, then commander, and try to see test again. See what happens. So we now have passing test. So we need to add actually, oh no, we'll try to run again our spec feature test. This one, we'll run this. Right, again. So expected to find the text employee listing, no, our home index template, but it didn't. So let's open that. we have views, homes, index, employee, but again, employee listing this. Listing. So that expect that to be cleared. Then now as for table employee list, so we could have done it already. Table that employee list. Okay, what's we need? That employee list. Let's just check that it gets cleared. Right, so we have another problem here, another failing example, because we expected this employee list item to be found on page 5 times, but it didn't, because actually we need now to introduce another aspect to our app. We need to add the models. So first, let's close this. So we need to create spec. Previously we've shown already to you how to generate controllers and spec. No, we actually we did this controller spec by hand, so we'll now try to gr spec model. Try to create employee model. I think this would work. So created this rspec model, employee spec.rb. We can check that. Also, it created factories. It would be used for generating stub models for our test. This is what it looks like. So you can add a few tests, describe methods or attributes. I'll change it, attributes. It corresponds to first name, also it corresponds to last name. That user or employee, factory girl that creates employee. So what this does is it lazy loads an employee variable. So say we run this and we have here a call to employee. This will be called here but not here, only when it gets called. So here what we like to expect employee.to correspond to first name. Likewise here we'd like to change it with last name, and then we could now try to run this spec models implies. So putting a name error. Initialize constant employee. So now let's try to fix that by generating an employee model. G model, employee, first name, last name. Actually you can add optional string, but that's optional. By default, this means that you'll be creating string fields. So let's leave it at that. So yeah, it's like before we had the conflict. I don't want to create that. Okay, so created this models employee. Also, when you create a model, it also generated this migration, so we'd like to run that migration. Just db migrate. Oh, it already migrated. And also I think we'd also have to change the factory spec factory employees. Add first name, last name. Let's add sample igong. Hope this works. So let's try to run our spec, model spec. Undefined error span tool. So here again, sorry. So sorry, I think I mean respond to. Should respond to first name, respond to, not response to. Check that. Okay, so now we have two samples that are passing for the employee. Next, we'd like to have I think it'd be nice to have a full name for this employee class. Spread over instance methods. Describe full name. Also have employees. Sorry. Employees. Employee. That first name, early, then last name, and RS. So spec. Sorry. Within your describe black, you got to have it bracket it returns the string which is it's simple as the first name and last name separated in space. First employee spec employee that full name to equal or eq right now we should have this failing. Let's try. So we have now an undefined method full name for the employee. The app models user employee. Sorry. So let's define full name. Returns first name and the last name. Let's try that. first name. So I should make the test passing now. Yeah, right. So I think we still have a problem with our feature spec, that we're still not being able to show those list items in the views here. This part. So this actually, this problem, we need to fix this in the controller. But first, let's see controller spec. We spec controllers, home controllers. We expect it to set some variables that would be used in the views. It sets an employee variable to equal to be the list of all employees. Expect. On the way, I have too many spaces here. Spec. To get this, we could use assigns employees to employees all. Yeah, that's what we want. This assigns employees. Should we get the @employees variable from the controller? Let's split this sp out, or let's see this field first. Sorry, split controllers. See what happens. I should fail correctly. So actually we made a wrong mistake. Yeah, that's not what we expected. Employees, we don't have any employees method, you only have employee. Let's try it again. Expected is to have this. Yeah, so let's fix it in our controller. SP controllers, home controllers, then set at employees, employee.all. Yeah, and here also you want to have, now let's move this to a variable, and all employees plus it's wanted to read well. Let's keep it to that. But let's create an employee. Trigger of that create employee that takes care of details for us. Let's try to run it now. Or yeah, let's try to run it. Should pass. Yeah, was able to set all our employees and match. So next we'll like to make use of these employees variable in our view. So from our view, we'd like to have row tr containing th, employee name, must be also employee ID, employee port ID, and then full name. Actually we want this, then we want to loop here. At employee .h2 employee. Every employee would like to add some content, like a row in the table. Sorry. Your TD times 2. And then we would like to use employee.id. Let's copy this. Employee.full name. Actually, we need to add employee list item class because we're still not adding it. We want to add it in our TR for each employee. Class equals employee list item. So I think that should be good now. Let's try. Ready? Let's try. Sorry, I ran the wrong. Should run spec feature so expected it to be shown 5 times, but it did not show because we're not setting it, because we never set we never added any employee in our database for this set of tests. So can probably before or no need before, because we only have one scenario. 5 times 2 factory girl that create actually there's the create list function in factory girl, so we don't need this 5 times. Create list employee and then the number. It would create 5 employees. Then we try to match it here that we showed 5 employee list item. So let's run it again. So now we have a passing feature test. We haven't yet run the server, but we are already sure that we have a working system. So to run our system, actually we don't have any user or employee in our system yet, so first let's run the console. Let's see. So let's create an employee that create, sorry, first name, early, last name. Now we have one user. Oops. What happened? Something's wrong with my terminal. Maybe I press some keys, so let's just open another terminal. But we already created the user. Sorry, it's fixed. No need for this one. Stick with this old terminal. Quit that console, and then you can now run the real server with TLS. You can check to see what happens if a real user visits. Oops. So it turns out there's something running on localhost 3000. I think I ran something earlier, so let's try to use a different port, -P option 5000. So now it's running properly. Let's try. Oops. Why Facebook? Localhost 5000. So here now we have the employee listing. Right now we have only one employee. Yeah, that's how you do test-driven development with Rails. Thanks for watching.